Hi, and welcome back to the second episode of the Pathfinders Podcast. I hope you all enjoyed listening to the very first episode with YouTuber Matt Diavella. If you are yet to check out that episode, then feel free to give that a listen once you're finished with today's episode. Episode 2 features an interview with Greene, a figure in the video game world who I've been a huge fan of now for a very long time. Greene is more commonly known by his online alias as PlayerUnknown, and is the creator of one of the world's largest video games, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or more commonly as it's known, PUBG. Brendan is hailed as the godfather and the creator of the Battle Royale genre, a genre which has taken the video game industry by storm over the past couple of years. The video game industry has forever found itself split into genres within its medium. Whether you're looking to play a sports title, a classic arcade game, a mobile puzzle game, or even a shooting game, there is something for everyone. By far, the most popular genre of video games falls into that action and shooter category, which, according to Statistica, made it for around 46% of the overall sales in the US during 2018. This genre has reigned supreme since the late 80s and early 90s, with titles such as Doom stapling the first-person shooter as one of the leading markets for video games. The term arena shooter is a popular subgenre of the shooting category itself, with some successful franchises including Call of Duty and Halo being incorporated into this. The late 90s saw a rise in multiplayer shooting games, with titles such as 007 GoldenEye on Nintendo's N64 opening up the market to new players to this competitive multiplayer experience. For those of you who are wondering what an arena shooter is, it's simply a competitive multiplayer shooting game in an arena or small closed map. Games such as Halo and Call of Duty will pit players against one another in a closed-off map whilst they're completing certain objectives in order to win the game. Plenty of game modes have stemmed from this subgenre over the years, and alongside different mechanics, ways of playing, interactions players have with one another, and the map they're playing in, players have taken to this genre, with its popularity growing every year since those early 90s days. The arena shooter worked, players loved it, and nothing could seem to take away any of those player numbers from that genre of arena shooters. So, how do you go about completely changing and shaking up an entire industry that has been thriving for over 20 years? Well, that's exactly what Greene did with his worldwide Battle Royale hit, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, aka PUBG. A Battle Royale game tends to be based on a larger map, hosting normally up to around 100 players. Players begin the game parachuting into a map and having to loot for supplies and weapons. Over time, a ring will close in around the map and eventually push players close together until one team is left the winner. In 2017, PUBG launched and completely took over the world. The term Battle Royale was a common word in the video game industry thanks to Brendan, and after a couple of years, titles such as Fortnite, Call of Duty, PUBG and Apex Legends were dominating the shooting genre with their versions of Battle Royale. Battle Royales now seem like they are taking over the typical arena shooters as the number one subgenre within the shooting category. I find myself playing the Battle Royale genre more than any others since the very start of Brendan's early Battle Royale games. So it was a pleasure being able to sit down and talk to someone who is hailed as the godfather of Battle Royale games. This is an interview for a feature in our upcoming magazine we are making, Volume 6 of 99% Lifestyle. With the epidemic and most of the world going through some sort of lockdown over the past few months, the issue has been delayed until things begin to get back to normal. This podcast episode is a different type of content than the feature that will be released in the magazine, so if you're a fan of this interview, then I would recommend keeping your eyes peeled for when that volume is available. But for today, please enjoy today's episode with Greene, which will explore his career, PUBG, changing the video game industry, and his thoughts on esports and his future projects. So just to get things started, Brendan, are you able to give me a quick introduction to who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am Brendan Greene, or most people know me as PlayerUnknown. I'm Director of Special Projects at PUBG Corp, but I was Creative Director on PUBG, the Battle Royale game, short for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. I have been hailed as the father of Battle Royale, I guess. I created the initial mod way back in the Arma series, maybe 5-6 years ago, developed it through various iterations, which eventually ended up being
okay.
PUBG.
And how did you get involved in the video game industry? Because Liz told me that you was a DJ and photographer as well before video games.
Yeah, no, I was kind of a very, very casual gamer. I played some of the AAA titles, like some of the Call of Duty, early Battlefield, Assassin's Creed, that kind of game, but very infrequently. As I said, I was a graphic designer kind of by day, and then at night either DJing or photographing events. So that's where my time was spent. So I didn't really spend a lot of time gaming. But then I was living in Brazil, and I was there for about 6 years. And in the final 2 years, I was kind of saving money to come home, doing work, and then just staying at home a lot. I got back into gaming where I discovered the DayZ mod on Arma 2. And that kind of opened my eyes to open world gaming, which I hadn't really seen before. This was a new concept for me, and this kind of drew me back into gaming and made me kind of fall in love with it again. So that's how I got back into gaming. And then over the last 5 years, I've kind of gone from being a modder to a consultant to creative director on a like a major title, I guess.
And how was it you came to be in Brazil? Was that from the photography and DJing that led you to travel?
No, love. Went chasing a lovely lady, and then we married, but didn't work out. We separated a few years later, and then I was there by myself because it's Brazil, right? So that's why I was in Brazil. So I had stayed there, and life, it was tough there because as a gringo in a small town, I wasn't in Rio or Sao Paulo. I was in a town called Varginha. It's a small, maybe 100,000 people or so. So quite a small town. So tough to live as an outsider, I guess.
Yeah. And during those stages where you talked about Arma and DayZ, how much influence did that have on you getting a job with the H1Z1 game? Could you fill me in a bit about that process?
Yeah, so I was modding. I had done the DayZ Battle Royale, which is the first iteration. It had zombies and all kinds of stuff in it. It was a very basic version of the game mode. But then DayZ kind of graduated from being a mod to a standalone game, and that was released and I think about around the Christmas time, and actually a lot of the more popular streamers at the time, like Lyric and Sacriel and stuff, they were playing my mod at the time of DayZ being announced it was going standalone or that it would be out. So then as the DayZ game came out, a lot of people kind of migrated away from Battle Royale or DayZ Battle Royale and the DayZ mod to the full-on game. I took that as an opportunity then to kind of graduate the game mode from Arma 2 into Arma 3, which had just been released. It just came out of beta, so I was confident it'd sort of be solid for the game mode. And I kind of refined at that stage. So the Battle Royale game mode that most people know, which is the plane dropping people over, the blue zone, that kind of was, while it was born in an Arma 2, was kind of refined. Zombies were taken out. I put an actual plane in to drop people and spread them across the island. So these were all added in Arma 3. It was my kind of friendliness with streamers, and I like streamers like Lyric, who I basically would just give them anything they wanted. Not because I wanted them to play the game. I just recognized these guys had communities, and if I gave them like sub Sundays and this kind of access to their own custom servers, I knew it would grow the Battle Royale community. And it was through these streamers that one of the designers on H1Z1 saw Battle Royale and thought this would be a great fit for their upcoming title, H1Z1. So they got in contact, offered me a chance to kind of include the game mode within H1. They actually thought I wouldn't accept because Arma and DayZ is quite realistic, and theirs wasn't so realistic. So, but I jumped on the opportunity because I saw it as a chance to get the game mode in front of a lot more people. Modding inherently is tough for the end user to sort of download, add a mod, maybe put in some command line stuff. It's not the easiest process. It's getting easier now, but it's often off-putting to a lot of the gaming public. So I was given the opportunity to have a play now button, basically, and I jumped at that. So while it wasn't my vision for a Battle Royale game, I just knew that it would help get Battle Royale in front of a lot more people. And it did. H1 had a concurrent of, I think, 150K at one stage. I mean, it was really quite popular. So that's how I got into to H1, basically.
I've got quite a few questions to ask regarding what you just said then, so apologies if I jump around a little bit, but it seems like a lot of mods were made from that initial Arma game. Was it quite easy to mod that, and was it easy for you? How long did it take to make that Battle Royale mod from that game?
I mean, originally it took me maybe about a month and it wasn't even complicated. It's like 2,000 lines of code. It's not super a complicated game mode. It's a blue zone, a red zone, and something that drops the players out, and a loot system. But all the logic behind it I had, or the way at least I thought in my mind how it worked. So it literally took me kind of begging and borrowing for code from other mod makers. Arma is relatively easy to mod, but still it's tough. You need to have an understanding of code because you can do it in an editor, but I liked coding. I was a web designer, so I had kind of some experience with, JavaScript and this kind of language. So the code of Arma is quite similar to these web languages. So it's kind of easy to understand, kind of. So I kind of, it's kind of easy to mod, but yeah, it still requires some effort. I'm not the greatest coder, so for me it was quite tough, but initially it took about a month to write the initial code.
And where did, say, the inspiration for BR come from? Because I did read that it might have been from the Japanese film Battle Royale, the same name.
No, well, the film gave me the idea for the name, right?
Yeah.
I mean, than anything else. I mean, I looked at the game mode they had in the game, and I love the idea of providing, and even in that first iteration, DayZ Battle Royale, it started in a shed. And PUBG, those very first betas that we had, we started people on the ground in a shed. And that was me just seeing if it would work. And it doesn't. Going back to the plane was the right way to do it. We discovered that in Arma 3. But initially, it was more like the movie where, you had 40 or 20 people that ran and got backpacks, and each backpack had a random item in it. So it was much more like the movie Battle Royale. But then I kind of looked at the game mode, and I was inspired by the Survivor games, and it was a take on the Hunger Games that was in the DayZ mod, and Brian Hicks and Jordan Taylor developed it, and it was just a take on the Survivor game or on the Hunger Games. But to my mind, the zones weren't clearly marked in the game; they were controlled by admins and not by a computer. So I just wanted to make it fairer. And also, the Survivor games was designed for streamers only, and not for, it wasn't like a game mode everyone could play. So I wanted to do that because I wanted to play it because I wasn't a streamer. So then I was making it for me to play, basically. But I was kind of inspired by the movie, and that I loved Battle Royale. I thought it was cooler than the Hunger Games. But the game mode itself in Battle Royale was squares, and I couldn't code squares because they're just too difficult. So a circle came from me. One, trying to kind of solve the problem that if you grid on an island, what happens if two players are in two separate portions of the grid and can't get to each other? It's a problem with game design. So the circle was born out of me not being able to code squares, but also because it solved that problem. And the ever-decreasing circle, it was kind of, that alone took me a good 2 or 3 weeks to kind of just fix, because it wasn't easy to do within Arma, at least.
And with the H1Z1 King of the Kill mode, I instantly fell in love with that when I started playing that game, and I feel like a lot of people that I was talking to were kind of getting a bit bored of a typical arena shooter. Do you think a lot of people was crying out for a different type of online multiplayer mode, and that was at the perfect time where these Battle Royale games started?
Yeah, it's what I wanted. I mean, I was playing, like, I play Battlefield 1 still, but still after an hour of playing, it just gets for me, a little repetitive, where it's just live, die, repeat, right? For me, I love that about DayZ, was that you valued your character. Even if you played it for 2 or 3 hours, those 2 or 3 hours were the most tense experience you have, because you value that person you're taking care of within the game. And with Battle Royale, because we give you the freedom to play whatever game you want, there's no AI, it's other players, there's a blue zone, and that's it, right? And the red zone, but we won't talk about that. But it's the freedom, I think, that it gives the player to show that I'm a better thinker than you. It's a game of decisions, right? It's not, it comes down to shooting a lot of the time, but it's more that I can outwit you and I have a better strategy for winning than you. And it's not even about the shooting; it's about the surviving for me. So I think that's why, at least I made the game, was because I was sick of kind of that live, die, repeat, and wanted to give something myself that was more challenging. And I think people were calling out for that, or at least it turned out they were calling out for that, right? Or we discovered.
Yeah. It definitely feels like that every single game you play, whereas arena shooters, they can be very similar to one another. Every game seems to feel unique. You'll never really have the same experience in a different game, basically.
I said I look at it very much, it's like poker, right? I mean, it's like you get the same deck of cards every time you land on the island, and everyone starts with nothing. And how you play the game is up to you, if you want to bluff, if you want to do this. And it's real adrenaline you get every time. It's not like a simple dopamine hit, which a lot of games give you. This is real adrenaline because you don't know the situation you're going to be in. And you see it across every one of these battle royales, be it PUBG or Fortnite or Blackout or any of them, they really give you that sort of adrenaline hit, because it is a different experience every time you play, because the game does end in a different location with different weapons every time.
And when you was working on H1Z1, how did that transition into PUBG? How did that come about? Was you contacted by someone, or?
Yeah, so I was kind of more like a consultant for H1Z1, so they had their own team and they kind of did their own thing, and I kind of let them do their own thing, really, because, yes, it was my game mode, but they wanted their own spin on it, which was much simpler than what I had in my own head. So I kind of wrapped up with them when they made it into their own product, H1Z1 King of the Kill. We went our separate ways at that time. And literally a few weeks later, I got an email from Chang-An Kim from Bluehole Geno Games at the time, saying, listen, I loved Battle Royale. I've wanted to make a Battle Royale for 10 years. I love what you've done with H1 and all the other mods. And he everything he wrote in that initial email was ticking all my boxes. He was kind of talking about being open world and modding and giving this kind of stuff. So, I was very excited at this stage, because I was kind of getting a little worried that I wouldn't get to make my own game, because I didn't know how to use an engine. I wasn't a very proficient coder, and I had no experience running a studio. So I was really wondering, would I get to make my own Battle Royale? So when he called me, or when he sent me this email, I jumped at the chance. And we were on a Skype call, I think, the next day. We chatted for hours. The next week, I was out in Seoul. I met the team, I met the company, all the directors, and I was very impressed by, they were an MMO studio and they were Korean, but I was very impressed by the quality of work they did. And they really, made sure that even, it's a fantasy MMO and you can be forgiven for like cutting corners a lot of the time, but they really made sure that, every little detail they made was really well made. And I really liked that, because that was what I wanted from making a game that was just well produced. And even from like those early days of DayZ Battle Royale, I did all the posters myself. I did all the artwork, and I always had this I wanted the game to look and feel, and as long as it was well made, I was happy. So yeah, I was in Korea then 2 weeks later to make PUBG. I moved like a day before my 40th birthday. I spent my 40th birthday with lots of people I didn't know, but they bought me cake, so it was nice. And some very nice whiskey. So as an Irishman, I was happy.
Yeah. And what was it like moving there? Because you moved straight into a creative director role as well, didn't you?
Yeah, like with no experience in the industry, not having never led a team before, I was given the role. But look, they supported me. The team knew that I didn't have that experience. I had a great game design lead who shouldered a lot of the burden of doing the analysis and design of the core system. So I was very lucky to have a team that fully knew that I didn't have this experience, but were willing to step up and then support me.
Mm. And did you have a lot of self-belief in yourself as well? Or did you find it quite daunting going into that?
Oh no, I've got stupid ego or confidence that I just think this will work, right? I mean, but I kind of knew from watching from H1, from Arma 3, and then seeing streamers like Lyric, like he was my touchstone. That like if he was still playing the game, I knew it was good, because he's such a fickle gamer. That he doesn't like something, he will tell you straight up, I don't like this. I think this is shit. So him coming back to Arma 3, even after months away, coming back playing and seeing him still enjoying it, I knew that I had something. So kind of going into making PUBG, I had that kind of confidence that I knew this game mode it had a little bit of a choice when it comes to weapons and lots of attachments, but I knew this core idea, or at least I believed this core idea would work. So yeah, I kind of have that kind of, even with this, next title, it's like I have a kind of a blind confidence that, listen, I want to play this game, and listen, if others don't want to, that's fine, but I think it's a good idea, right? And I think, some of said it's ego, but I just think it's sometimes blind confidence, maybe stupid confidence, but let's see.
And also as well, because when you launched PUBG, you also kind of had your online alias attached to the game as well, quite clearly. How did that PlayerUnknown come about? Was that
we're going to call it, so the mod was called PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale, but I had seen at that stage, not that I'd seen the writing on the wall, but I'd seen a lot of companies were thinking of doing a Battle Royale title. So I just thought that Battle Royale is going to be used everywhere, and if you call your game that, it's not good. So we thought, and as well, I thought, like, as we did, that these would be games that would be more than just Battle Royale. that it was more than just the Battle Royale game mode. So I thought calling it something else. So PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds was just a name that was knocking around in my head, suggested it to CH. He said yes. And yeah, it was risking a lot. Like putting your name on the game is yeah, it'll either be brilliant or you will never work in games again, right? I mean, it's one or the other.
And how long was it in development for before the early access was open?
Oh, it's like 9 months.
Okay.
I started on March 28th, and we launched into early access in December. I mean, it was earlier than that. It was, oh God, when was early access? Yeah, it was, oh no, it was a year later. Sorry. Yeah. It was like, I'm trying to remember because we launched either into early access on the 23rd of March and then we went full. Yes, sorry, that was it. Because we said we'd remain in early access for 6 months and it took 9 months. But the actual development of the game took a year. Jesus. Yeah, so we spent about a year developing it. Like when I joined, they had a prototype, a very, very rough prototype. So that and I was very worried early access because you immediately ask questions, right? It's like, will you leave early access? That being the first. But I mentioned these concerns with CH, and like that's why we did like a beta phase, sort of in the kind of 6 months leading up to early access launch. We opened up the game to testers. Like we were showing them our prototype. Like there's a video on my, I think it's Vimeo channel that has that I think it's our second alpha test, and it's quite literally like a prototype of the game. Like the map is bare. It's like there's just houses in the middle of nowhere. There's no set dressing. It's a very, very clear prototype of a game. But we believed because it was a multiplayer game and it is strictly multiplayer, having that sort of early access from that community is very important, so that when you do eventually launch into early access, the game is somewhat stable, and that's something I wanted. I didn't want to release a buggy game into early access, and I remember like that last weekend of beta testing where we had I think 60 or 80,000 beta testers generally, and we that last weekend of beta testing, people were having fun. I was watching like streamers like Break and stuff, and there were no game-breaking bugs. Yes, there were some hilarious bugs, but in general, the game was playing smooth and running, and the systems were working. So I was very excited and happy at that stage, and very relieved that the game was working. It's a credit to the team. I mean, to pull a multiplayer game with it started I think like 80 players or 64 players. I think we started with, but then we bumped it up to 100. And there's very few battle royales that do that 100 player, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and in that development phase, you talked earlier about how you was giving people like the streamers and stuff anything they wanted. Was that kind of in your mind in the development phase that the streamers would be key to this game's success?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we were really lucky in that I had a community of streamers. We didn't, when our first marketing leads joined, we told them, like, they were asking how much did we spend on marketing in that first, early access, and we didn't spend anything. I mean, we really had zero market and no need for it, because we had such a strong community of people that wanted to see what my battle royale game would be, right? Like, I mean, I had H1 and people knew my name, but now getting a chance to make my own game was a big draw on a lot of the streamers. And as I said, like, yeah, back all the way through those mod developments, I just made sure that I was just always friendly towards streamers. And I did a lot of charity events for Extra Life and stuff, where we raised, now it's small money, but like $50,000-$60,000 with streamers. And I kind of always used my game to kind of help them promote themselves as well, right? I mean, it's a back and forth kind of relationship you have to have. But my thing was that I never asked them for anything. I never went with a lot of games. They'll go and ask them for things. For me, it was like, you want to come play my game? That's great. What do you need? Right? I mean, it was never come play my game, please, because they hear that 20 times a day.
Yeah. And did you ever hear feedback that actually from individual streamers that actually impacted the game as such, where you actually made changes on the back of their feedback?
Oh, we heard very loud feedback. Our community is great because they are so passionate, and it's not like a PUBG community or a H1 community. It's like a battle royale community across all battle royale games where they want a good battle royale game, and for us they want a good realistic. So like with us, we changed the way looting happened, and the community just roared at us and went, well, actually, no, this is the way you should be doing it, or it should be the old way because of these advantages or this. And they pointed out points that we hadn't seen, right? It was like, well, this requires a mechanical skill. And it's like, oh my God, you're right. So we reverted to what they wanted. And they have provided to be a very good touchstone in all that, where we roll out changes. They will let us know very quickly if they like it. And it's why we have a test server, because we share that with them. And we're very lucky to have a very vocal community, and they try to tell us what they want from the game. And we try to listen as much as we can. It's one of our like core values where we put our fans first.
Yeah. And I can imagine it can also be frustrating when you've got fans that are so passionate about the game where it can borderline on, I suppose, very negative feedback as such, or where they want changes like there and now and various other things that they don't like about the game. How hard is it to deal with that aspect?
Well, no, I mean, I've been dealing with feedback. Let's call it feedback for the last 5 years, and it's great because listen, sometimes their passion for the game gets in front of giving you a clear example of what's wrong. Fix your fucking game is not helpful. Fix the fucking lag in the game, that is somewhat helpful, right? I mean, because it's pointing towards what the problem is. So we have great community managers now that like funnel this kind of wide-ranging feedback into, what you get. People that want stuff that's better for them just because they've lost in a certain way, but you've also got a large majority of people that want stuff that is better for the whole community in general, and they're thinking about how the game can be made better. So we have these kind of funnels where, like across the world now, we have like community sentiment and community feedback reports that come out on a weekly basis that kind of, show the dev team, because we're 500 plus, I think, right across the world. So, we're quite a large company. So trying to get all that feedback from everyone, because we're a global game and it's not just one market we have to look after now. So it's tough, but I think we've managed to, over the last year, build these kind of, as I said, funnels that the right info gets to the right people.
And how long would you say into the early access when the game kind of started really blowing up and taking over the world as such? Because it really felt like it did just kind of take over the world at some point before it actually fully launched.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was, Jesus, I think it was like 6 months in. We had something like 3 million players online, CCU. It was crazy. It was, it was about 6 months out. It seemed that everyone was playing us. It was fantastic. It was, I think that was, and then about 3 months later we launched.
Did that kind of just trickle up, or did it just kind of one day it just suddenly spiked and then just kept going up and up?
No, it just kept going up and up. I mean, we broke 1 million copies sold in 16 days or something. I mean, it was crazy, the speed, and it just was that kind of curve. And it seemed to kind of go almost parabolic at one stage, where it just, especially when China got wind of the game and liked the game, which was unusual. It really rocketed up, and we were selling crazy numbers of copies daily. I mean, we were now, and now you see it even with mobile. I mean, mobile now has, again, it's taken over the world. It's like 400 million plus downloads. I mean, I think like 50 million players every day. I mean, it's crazy numbers. It's because I remember like League of Legends, that was the game. That's the biggest game, right? It's like 100 million monthly actives is kind of where you aim for. That's like, we get like 50 million a day now on mobile, which is just, it's crazy. I never expected this. It's beyond what I ever could have hoped for.
Yeah, and that isn't normal either for a game in early access, is it? Because I suppose early access, the point of it is to iron out the kinks for when the game is ready to launch as such, is it? Or is it for another reason?
Well, no, I mean, especially for a multiplayer game, early access, we needed it because, listen, you're building an 8x8 map. I mean, you can QA it as much as you can internally, but like having a player base of millions QA for you is much quicker, I guess, right? But also it's because it's an online and a multiplayer game, it's super important to get people's feedback on how the guns feel, how, the speed of the circles feel, all this to really give us, and we have a whole data science division that looks at this data now on a daily basis to kind of really start to tune the game now, because the game runs well now. It's, the maps we have, yes, we have some improvements to make, but overall we're happy. And now it's really about tuning and balancing and trying to make sure that the game, lives up to what people want from it. But early access for us was a chance for us to iterate and improve. We saw it as like Facebook have their kind of permanent beta status, right? And we saw early access as the start of that, where we would just continually get it to a stage that we felt, okay, this is feature complete. Now we can just continually start to iterate. So early access was to develop out of those features, make sure we added some that people wanted and get feedback. Like, the frying pan, it was a mistake. Well, no, it was because early access, we weren't super strict with pushing code and stuff internally, and we were testing to see what it would be like if the frying pan could deflect stuff and if it could be bulletproof. We didn't pull it out of the build before it got pushed to live, and the bulletproof frying pan went to live. Players loved it. We couldn't remove it then, but it wasn't technically a decision we made, like a game design decision. We decided to put in a bulletproof frying pan. It kind of went in by accident. And even the frying pan was put in as a tribute to Battle Royale, even though there's no frying pan in Battle Royale. There's a saucepan lid, but because I forgot, we now have a frying pan. So it's in there by happenstance, which is nice.
And it's probably one of the most iconic symbols as well, isn't it, for the game? Yeah,
really is. I mean, I really want to get us to a stage where we can do, grenade tennis with the frying pan. It is a dream.
And did at any point you kind of take a step back and realize that, say for instance, this industry, I suppose you could go back to as far as, say, like GoldenEye, Doom, where arena shooters had dominated kind of the industry since that period, that you have really shaken up and changed the entire game industry with this new genre? At what stage did you kind of realize that?
I don't want to say I still haven't realized it, but I mean, I keep getting told, that I changed gaming. Like, I read an article that said, it was the most important game since, I think, Modern Warfare, in the way that it changed how games were played. And that's great, right? I mean, I think it's wonderful that people think that of, but for me, I think it was, again, just people wanted something different from a shooter. They wanted to like I said, we give players freedom. Like if you want to drop at school and go crazy, you can. If you want to get out of the way to one of the far off towns, you can as well. There's no right way to play. Me, I love a bush, and I find a bush and I hide in a bush and I get scared, but I still get the top 3, right? But I think it's. I don't think arena shooters are going anywhere, but I think this is it. There just needs to be kind of an evolution of how people play games, and I think we're waiting for the next one now, right? I mean, now there has been a spate of battle royales. We had the same with MOBAs, where you had a massive spate of MOBAs. Same with MMORPGs. So I think gaming's still very young, right? So I think there's a lot of exploration left in the space.
Yeah, and do you think battle royales will follow the same pattern as arena shooters, where they do kind of get a bit stale after a while, or do you think there's still quite a long lifespan in them? I suppose where arena shooters
guaranteed to get a little stale. I mean, with everything, listen, it gets overdone, right? I mean, look at movies like Apocalypse, or it came out, and then there was a spate of Meteor movies that came out, right? It happens with same with MOBAs, but I think there will always be those battle royals. I think we're one of them that will just remain. It's like CS:GO, right? That it is the 5v5 shooter, right? I mean, it's the same with Dota and League. I think space for a few battle royales for sure, because it's an interesting space. I mean, I don't think it's going to be one battle royale and that's it. I think there's space, but it's guaranteed to get stale, of course. I mean, people's habits change, but I think battle royale stands a good chance of remaining somewhat interesting because of its inherent gameplay, which is it's unique every time. You're not getting used to the map, or every pixel. It's going to be a different experience every time you play. So I think that gives it some legs, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose you must have realised early on that there would be competition from other games who would make battle royales, like Fortnite, Apex, Call of Duty. Was you kind of aware of that very early on, or was that something that you kind of didn't really think too much about until it just happened?
Well, I mean, we never really thought about our competition, really. I mean, even internally now, we really try to focus. We have our own internal roadmap. We look at obviously what other games do, but really we try to focus on what we want from our game. So, look, of course, there's competition. It happens within every field, especially when you make something popular. You know, everyone wants a piece of that pie, and you know, it's yeah. But like, I mean, you said like everyone in the world played us, and then Fortnite came along and showed us really what a meaningful phenomenon was. I mean, they really took gaming more mainstream than I think we ever did, and it's crazy to see how like Battle Royale was featured on Ellen. I mean, you know, that's to me like ticking the box. It's like you know it's amazing to see the heights that I guess Battle Royale has taken gaming and into the sort of public arena.
Mm. And was there any kind of frustration coming from that? Because surely some of the Battle Royales must have copied some elements of what I suppose you created.
Oh, I mean, I've seen some in China that are straight up copies. Like they literally used our assets. I mean, but look, for me, it was never about that. I always thought it as a game mode. I mean, we have success. We don't really need to worry. I mean, there will always be competition. But I think if you focus on your own product, you know, you don't really, you know, as long as your own product is good, that's what I worry about. And for me, I never really worried about others. And it was more about just making what I had good.
And I did hear you talk about esports as well, and that was something that you was very you had like this grand vision for it very early on into the development. Did you kind of think that would be a big part of PUBG's success, or was that just something that you wanted to see, even if it didn't kind of take off as much as you would have liked the esports scene for PUBG?
Well, no, I mean, it's one of the reasons I sat down to play Battle Royale, because I looked at stuff like CSGO and League, and I always thought, you know, it's just two teams of five against each other. You know, let's fill the arena with players, and Battle Royale does that, right? I mean, like you can put 100 players or whatever, we have like 64 players into an arena, and it looks great. I mean, for me, esports was always the dream. It was amazing to see our first one in Berlin, and being on that stage was, you know, it was humbling to see we reached what I always wanted from it, which was Battle Royale in an arena, right? But again, for us, yes, it was an important goal of ours in those early days. But we always said, like, if the community don't want it, we won't do it. But they wanted it. I mean, they were screaming out for competitive modes from very early on. But it's a battle. I mean, it really, to set up a new esport, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, if you look at those early days of CS, of League, it took 3-4 years to really come up with a system that worked, that was fair, that the fans liked, that the players liked. And we have a similar struggle, I think. You know, we're in year 2 now, and, you know, I see the initial kind of planning taking some more years. I mean, we have a 5-year plan right now, but that may change. You know, that it's a difficult market to be in because no one has really done it before, and there is no kind of guidebook as to this is how you create an esport, or this is how you manage an esport. So it's a challenge. It's still our goal, at least, because I think inherently it's a very watchable and understandable esport. I mean, our Battle Royale, PUBG, I think out of all of the esports, I think it's one of the most understandable and relatable for not just gamers, but for everyone. I mean, I think my grandmother could understand PUBG because it looks like real life, right? I mean, I think other esports struggle with that, in that, you know, you're looking at Dota, where even me as a gamer needs to turn on the new noob stream, and still I don't really understand what's going on, right? I mean, it's so complicated, but PUBG isn't, right? It's a simple. So I think we stand, again, we have legs, right? I think we stand a chance to make something out of Battle Royale esports. But again, it's going to be a difficult struggle because no one's done it before.
Yeah. And when you're setting up that, do you kind of just open it up for organisations and people to apply, or are you contacting organisations and being like, do you want to make a team for this PUBG esports? How does that work?
Oh no, so we have like a structure that we want for our league, for our global. We have like each region has its own like a league, but we leave that up to like third-party organizers. So we have a partner within each, I think, like Faceit and GLL and a few others. So like we have these partners worldwide that run the leagues. Regarding professional teams, that's up to them. If they want to enter into Battle Royale esports, especially PUBG esports, that's up to them. Some have come in, some have left. It's kind of a little bit fluid right now. But again, it's because the esports just starting. You know, it's some are waiting, some are, you know, deciding, okay, right now is not the time, or there's other esports they want to pursue. It's, it's a little bit like the Wild West, I guess. But yeah, we basically try to set up the league and the common rule set, and then everyone else kind of decides if they want to be part of it.
And where do you see the industry in esports actually going? Because it feels like every year it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Do you feel like that's the way it's going as more mainstream?
I think there's more and more call for like good competitive esports viewing. I mean, you have a fan base there. You have people that love watching games. That's shown by Twitch. Like, look, all of these streaming services show year-on-year growth, right? I mean, it's gaming in general, like it's 3 times more money than music last year or something. Like it's being crazy, and that's only going to get bigger because the younger generations are just growing up connected and with technology. So I think that sort of upper age of a gamer is going to get higher and higher and higher. So there's going to be more and more people that want to watch games rather than watch TV, for example, right? So, or even watch sport rather than watch esports. So I think it's going to keep growing. But again, as I said, it's quite the Wild West right now. I mean, I think there needs to be sort of some temping down and kind of like, let's get organized and make sure that people aren't getting ripped off. And, we're creating a sport here, or at least we're trying to create sports. So there has to be sort of some kind of, not union, but, something to kind of, for people to come together and go, this is serious, especially for the amounts of money that are being competed over. Like, you look at Fortnite World Cup, they're paying the winner more than most of like the serious sports competitions, like, the PGA Tour and stuff like this, is less money than Fortnite World Cup. So we need regulation, we need to keep it up because not everyone's out for the best for everyone, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And do you think there's kind of like, I suppose, mainstream media, people like BBC or something like that, they don't really understand fully what it's about yet? Because I remember when that Fortnite World Cup took place and a lot of places reporting on, 13-year-old wins X amount of money. And if I was to tell my parents what an esport was, they probably wouldn't have a clue what it is. And do you think that's kind of mainstream for that generation, that there isn't really much knowledge of what is going on and what it's all about?
You see it on ESPN, on, as you said, BBC and stuff. I try to explain what skins are to my dad. I mean, and how a virtual jacket in my game is worth $1,000, right? I mean, and he's looking at me going, "What? But how do you mean you don't own it? You can't wear this jacket, but you're still paying it that." So there is this lack of understanding from an older generation. I mean, BBC are good; they have some good reporters on Newsbeat and stuff that really try to take gaming to the masses and explain it in an understandable way. But you do still see that level of ignorance, like ESPN show Dota or something like that. So people are going, "What the hell is this kids game doing on my sports network?" Right? So, but there is are calling for it. I mean, yes, you will have these loud, boisterous voices that don't understand what's going on, but the majority want it, and I think you're going to see more and more of it being pushed into the mainstream.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to quickly jump back onto PUBG and talk about why you decided to take a step back from the Battle Royale and work on special projects. Can you talk more about why you did that? Did you feel like the job was kind of done, or?
So I've had other games in my head. I mean, I got into gaming, as I said, about 5 years ago, and since then I've had the chance to think about, first was Battle Royale, and then what else I want. And I sat down with our CEO last year and was trying to figure out what I wanted next, or what we wanted to do next. What was next for PlayerUnknown or for me? And with Battle Royale, there's an amazing team there that know what it is we want from the game. So I was lucky that I could step back, right, and leave the team to run the game. So, special projects, which is where I am now, was just my chance to go explore what's next for PlayerUnknown, or what's next for gaming, right, at least in my head. And that's why I stepped back. It wasn't really stepping back. I still, like, we have internal committees that we kind of share knowledge in that sort of broader scope of crafting in general. And, we're always, anything that's happening on a bigger scale or a more high level scale with any of the games, including PUBG, I'm kind of involved in. And we really try to, make sure that, yeah, listen, I might be working on other projects, but, people still value the opinion and want it. So, for that, I feel quite lucky.
Mm. And was this a completely new team, or was this just taken from... So it wasn't transferred across from the Battle Royale team?
We started from scratch. I hired some directors, and then they built out their teams, but we started from scratch, fully new team. We're at, I think, 20 people now. So really, really good team, and we're working, like, I can't share obviously anything that we're working on, but it really is. We're looking at some different experiences. I'm not working on PUBG 2. I'm not working on a shooter game. It's something different, and I'm excited to share. I mean, it's cool to get to work on new things, and especially some of the stuff we're doing. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and I know you probably aren't, like you said, you're not able to share too much, and I know you said that it's not going to be a battle royale, but is the games you're working on, are they again born from that passion where it's something that you want to see that isn't currently out there, that it is going to be something different, not particularly a genre, but just a game that isn't out there?
I'm not trying to create more genres. I mean, I really, the game I'm working on at the moment, we had an idea, we have a problem we wanted to solve, and this was an idea built on top of that. And it's an experience. I mean, it's again, one of the questions we were asked was like, what is a PlayerUnknown game, right? I mean, what makes a PlayerUnknown game? So, we were kind of deciding that it's a game that is unforgiving and a little bit brutal, which, with PUBG, we don't tell you how to play the game. We put you into an aircraft and you parachute into an island, and how you survive is up to you. Now, there are tutorials now, but when we first started, there were never tutorials. It was always, thrown in the deep end. And with any other games, this is something I want to kind of focus on, that these are not going to be easy games, right? These are not going to be kind of hold your hand and this is how you play. This is an experience. If you want to take it on, that's up to you. But for me, making games, and why I started modding in the first place, was deliver an experience that was unforgiving, and I didn't really care that people bitched about how hard it was, because if you did that, I'd make it harder. Because, I really do believe that people like a challenge, and, a lot of games worry about, holding your hand and making sure that it fits. It's something for everyone. For me, a PlayerUnknown game it's for a particular type of person, and that person likes a challenge.
And is there anything that you are able to share that perhaps you haven't shared with anyone else yet? Even if it's something small, I guess.
Well, I mean, as I said, like, it's not PUBG 2 and it's not a shooter. I mean, I haven't really shared that before. I mean, that is an experience. I can't really share anything else. It's exciting, but it's not PUBG 2.
Okay. And is there any kind of, are you able to share perhaps when you're looking to get this out? Is it within, say, a couple of years' time, or is there really no time limit on when this will get done?
We don't really have a time frame yet. I mean, even if we did, really, we don't have a time frame yet. But I mean, I'm hopefully towards the end of the year, we should be able to announce something more. I mean, because I don't want people to forget about me. But it's more like I'll know at that stage then, a much better time frame on if we can release something.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it, because I put a lot of hours into PUBG and DayZ as well. So I'm looking forward to the next thing you're working on.
I'm hoping to give people something else they can pour a lot of hours into. Right? I mean, if everything I do, it's to try to provide a good experience for the player, and one that doesn't ask for much. It just gives you something to do.
I hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode with Brendan Greene. This podcast is now available on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. If you would like to follow us on social media, then all the links can be found on the 99% Lifestyle website. That's simply 99percentlifestyle.com. At the end of each interview I conduct, I ask the interviewee to give me 5 recommendations for our audience. This can be from books you should read, musicians you haven't heard of before, video games you should play, to documentaries you need to watch. These recommendations are sent out each and every week as a free newsletter to the 99% Lifestyle subscribers. All issues are archived on our website too, so if you would like to read Brendan Greene's recommendations, then head over to the 99% Lifestyle website, click the newsletter page, and then click on issue number 124. If you sign up to our newsletter, then you will also be updated about new podcast episodes, blog posts, and various product releases from our print magazine to clothing products. Thank you again for listening to today's episode of the Pathfinders Podcast. We'll be back very soon with episode 3.